and welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Carrie Siggins. I'm so glad you're here today. Today, my guest is Jeremy Osterberger, who is the president and COO of BIC Alliance. They own three companies. BIC Magazine is what they are most known for, but they also do recruiting and M&A services. And BIC Magazine is the publication that serves the industrial cleaning industry. Jeremy is awesome. He's such a great leader, so humble, learned so much from playing sports and from being part of a family who has incredible work ethic. And I had to have him on after I was on his podcast to talk about my book, to share some of his insight because he's just so down to earth and humble and such a great guy. So I know you're going to love this interview, and hang tight, and I'll be right back with Jeremy. All right, everybody. I am back with my dear friend and industry mate, Jeremy Osterberger. Jeremy, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Oh, I'm jazzed to be here, Carrie. I had you on my podcast, I don't know, a month or so ago, touting the new book, The Ownership Mindset, and just glad to be here with you today.
I'm so glad. This is going to be a fun conversation. All right, before we jump into BIC Alliance and what you do, tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been with BIC Alliance, and give us some background.
Oh, just so glad to be here, Carrie. Been here about 20 years at BIC. I kind of started my career doing something a little bit different. I was the editor of a senior citizens publication out of school, went to LSU, go Tigers. Got out of school and ran a senior citizens publication, had a nationally recognized, column called 87 Seconds, where I interviewed World War II veterans. At the time, I was writing this about every 87 seconds a World War II veteran died. And so that was the purpose of my piece. And I would interview these war heroes and veterans and let them tell their story to me, which got really interesting at times. And a lot of times their families had never heard their story. That was kind of where I started my career. I'm a journalism major. And then Earl Hurd, our founder here at CEO, found me and asked me to come on board with BIC about 20 years ago. So a little bit about my background and my origin story of making my way to BIC.
And did you always want to go into journalism? I mean, have you always been a writer,
Yeah.
speaker? Where'd that passion come from?
So look, I'm going to say this, and it's real clear. I mean, it's kind of alludes to some of the things in your books. And for me, it was really just an English teacher that told me, "Oh, you're a good writer." And then I had a speech teacher who was like, "Hey, you're pretty decent at speaking. You should probably," and I thought, wait a minute, maybe I should merge the two and probably go into media. But I will say this, it kind of required someone in my life, like a high school teacher, to tell me I was good at it. And I just think that's a lesson that I've carried with me for a very long time. I think that it's really important for us to say that to kids, because for me, I wasn't necessarily thinking that way at all. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And about my sophomore, junior year, my English teacher said, "You're good. You should try that." Right. And so that did lead me down a path, to be frank with you. And that's been a passion of mine forever. I love media. I love what we're doing now. It's probably my favorite thing to do for anything related to work. Is this work? I don't know. It's fun. I don't know. I don't know. Are we getting paid for this, Carrie? I don't know.
Yeah, right. I know. It's so funny that you share that story because I know that you know this about me, but not everybody does. I was well, obviously I'm a writer. I wrote a book, but I was in journalism. I loved writing for my high school newspaper. I went out for the newspaper when I was a sophomore, and I was a copy editor my junior and editor in chief my senior year, winning awards. And I thought for sure I was going to go to journalism school or something along those lines. But my high school trig teacher said, "You're really good at math. You should consider engineering." And so I went to a women in engineering program for a long weekend when I was a junior in high school. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is what I'm going to do, because she was really encouraging me. And it was the only person that I had encouraging. My mom was always like, go to college, but do what you want. But having that influence of you should do this, it's what actually made me pivot into engineering. So the power of teachers pushing you to go after your dreams, your goals, and align that with what you're good at is really, really powerful. So I'm glad you shared that story.
Yeah. No, my mom was a dance teacher and my dad worked in the plants. So I didn't think I really wanted to do either one of those, although I consider myself a pretty good dancer, I'm just saying.
I
But
was gonna say, I could totally see you dancing.
yeah, I don't know. Ballet wasn't for me. Maybe tap, maybe a little jazz there, Carrie. That's so.
Salsa?
But I do have a true story. This is true. My mother, being a dancer, she did put me in dancing, and I was like 3, and I was a mouse. This little girl stepped on my tail, and I punched her right in the arm. My mom was like, "Okay, it's time for soccer, baseball, football. Like, pick something else." That was it. That was the end of the. That was the last recital. I was probably 3 and a half. That was it. So, yeah.
Oh,
I
she
mean,
had to give up on your dancing career at such a young age,
it
huh?
was I still have dreams, but no, I put that one away for the time being. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
understood, understood.
whiskers and all, Carrie, I had whiskers and all. It was
It's like I am picturing it right now, it's pretty cute.
frightful. So, yeah, she'll appreciate me mentioning that.
Uh-huh. You also played sports. I know that's something that we shared. You played baseball. How did playing sports shape who you are today?
Yeah, no, huge. Played catcher, and catcher was kind of the coach on the field, right? And I really do remember really early on, probably, early middle school, playing baseball. And I remember telling the coach when maybe my best friend that was pitching, like, "Hey, he didn't have it today. We got to swap this guy out." I was never afraid to do what was best for the team. Sometimes those decisions are maybe unfavorable to an individual, and that really is it. That was when I realized, like, wait a minute, I'm okay with this. I'm okay making or at least suggesting, I guess the coach made the call that, hey, this is our best path. And then, hey, man, I was wrong several times, right? Next guy comes in, home run, leaves the field. That's on me, right? So I think that that really was when I learned, hey, you got to go, you got to go with your gut, right? At the same time, try and own when you make a horrible mistake. And which, by the way, I'm still working on, right? I don't know if we ever master that, but no, it is true. Sports definitely was a bridge, I would say, for me, adolescence to being a teenager and then developing into an adult. And those lessons for me were vital. I cherish them every day. And to this day, some of my closest friends are still kids that I'm serious, probably T-ball on. And I think that battle, man, fighting together and playing together. I was a Catholic school kid. We played in the Catholic school leagues in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, on fields that, may or may not had potholes or broken glass. I don't know. And we fought through it all and found a way, despite many, many losses on the baseball field. I guess we cherished the few wins we got, right?
I think that's good, and it's such good valuable leadership lessons, what sports teach us, and I think the 2 that you just really pointed out are so good. 1, if you're not making mistakes, that means you're not taking risks, and life is about taking risks and growing, and so I think that making mistakes is a valuable part of our development and not something that should be avoided. It's all about how we grow and learn from them, but you gotta be taking some risks and push yourself and fall on your face a couple times or
Yeah.
maybe a lot to, I think, develop yourself as a leader. And then that whole idea of learning how to lose well, because
Yeah.
let's face it, life is about losing and it's not all rainbows and unicorns and success and winning and getting awards for things. It's about brutally, getting beat and having to pick yourself up and say, okay, how do I do better? And how do I build a winning strategy or winning team when we're not winning? So I think those are 2 really valuable leadership lessons that I think you just mentioned
And
there.
and I think in baseball especially, right? I mean, if you bat 300, you're probably an all-star. If you bat a little
Yeah.
bit higher than that, you're probably a Hall of Famer, and that's 3 out of 10, right? You know what I mean? And so I love thinking about baseball as an analogy to even our careers and success in sales. I think, if you can maintain that kind of average and making your presentation and earning some business, you're probably doing pretty good too. So,
Yep, absolutely. So now you went to journalism school, went into journalism, went into media. And a lot of times that can just take you down a path of being really great at media, but you've pivoted into leadership now, president and COO at BIC Alliance. How did you see yourself as a leader in those early days? And was that something that you aspired to, or did you always think you would be creating content or
yeah.
writing stories? Uh-huh.
No, you know what, Carrie, it's funny. Well, first off, I'd say I still feel like I know 10% of what I should, right? I hope that humility is what my staff sees and what others see. So I think if I keep that mentality of, hey, I don't know the 95%, I like to maintain that mentality. Hopefully it shows humility, right? It keeps me humble. I think for me, we're a small company, right? We have about 27 employees. The great thing about our size is I can still see everybody here. I can look them in the eye. I can have those relationships, right? And sometimes I don't feel like I'm doing a great job of it, even with as few staff as we have, right? You know what I mean? And so that's always a struggle, right? I'm a very client centric person. I have to plan time for my staff, and that isn't always favorable to the team.
Yep, understood. What's the biggest leadership mistake that you've made? Like where you just got smacked in the face by leadership and go, "Oh, I had to learn that lesson."
Yeah, well, I probably made 10 today before we got on this podcast. I don't know if I can point to a single thing. I would say this personalities is something that I've really tried to focus on at BIC. We have, yes, think of our companies, right? We have 3 different businesses that make up the BIC Alliance, right? BIC marketing, communications, That's heavily our sales arm of our organization. We have recruiting, which is a little bit different. Recruiting is like half sales, half placing candidates, finding the right person. It's matchmaking, right? It's a little bit different. And then the third leg of our triangle is M&A, mergers and acquisitions for companies looking to buy and sell. That's way more numbers oriented. It's EBITDA, it's revenue, those types of things. And so for me, it's all the different personalities. Our writers are not our salespeople. Our digital production team is not our writers. Is that going to make sense? And so for me, trying to be more and more aware of people's mentalities, their mindsets, their differences, it's one of those things where for me, I have to stop and say, wait a minute, who am I about to communicate with? Is what I'm saying positive? Is it a challenge we need to overcome? Is it a critique? How am I going to approach saying this? Because, hey, the sales team, almost any way I communicate, I think for the most part, they can weather it, they can understand it. We get through it quicker. I think with some of our other departments, I definitely have to be more calculated, in my communication. That's on me. And I feel it too. During the conversation, I'd be like, wait a minute, the car is veering off the road. You know what I mean? Like, wait a minute. And the good thing is, I think I feel it. So I have to modify my approach. But that's been the most fascinating thing to me is that personalities are not your own. And that relational approach and understanding someone's personalities and the way that they hear words is still my challenge. And I'm getting better at it, but I have a long way to go. So,
I think it's such an important one, though. We experience things through our lens, and it's so easy to say, oh, well, people like the same things that I like, or can be communicated with the same way that I like to be communicated with. And that's just simply not true.
uh,
And so I say the very best leaders are able to modify themselves like that in the moment. Well, beforehand, right? Going into a conversation, but even in the moment of the car's veering off the road here, how do I fix it? When you see that happening in a conversation or feel that happening in a conversation, do you stop and fix it right there? What do you do when you're like, okay, what I'm saying isn't landing here and I need to get this back on track? What do you do?
make here kind of a couple different things. First off, probably try and pause, try and
Mm.
paraphrase what they said to make sure they understand that you heard what they said. That's what I try and do. And then sometimes, no, hey, this isn't the time, right? We're not quite getting through to each other, whether it's me, you, both, right? And hey, let's pause this, give it some thought, come back to it. That does happen sometimes, right? The challenge is you're always trying to move on to the next thing, Carrie. And so I want to get this resolved. And is that my ego? No, I can get through this. I can complete this discussion, right? And that I would say that I'm trying to do more of the latter. Like, hey man, at the time it isn't right. If we're both busy, if we don't have the time to, when I thought might be a 10-minute conversation turns into 20-minute conversation, and I don't have the time to execute that conversation, maybe it is best to come back tomorrow. And that it's hard. You know what I mean? I don't know how many people have mastered that.
It is. It is really hard, but, it's so important because a lot of times you have to be able to say, "You know what? This conversation, this has not landed. Let's just pause and
Yeah,
let's
pause.
circle back." But if you don't circle back as a leader, right, you lose credibility or that magic moment where you can come in with a good night's sleep, with a little bit more perspective and say,
Right.
"All right, let's pick this up where we left and have a much more positive
Maybe
conversation."
maybe you bounced it off of a spouse, maybe a
Yeah.
coworker, maybe someone in a different department. I love doing that. I like to maybe go outside of one department and maybe present my challenge, right? And maybe someone from a totally different department might impartially see two different perspectives. That's powerful to me. Where it's like, wow, man, I'm thinking this person's perspective, my perspective. Wait a minute, there's actually eight other ones. You know what I mean? And if I can get someone else to maybe shed some light on something, perhaps both of us will have a little bit better understanding as we go forward.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And to get to know personality styles, do you use any assessments or tools within BIC to help
Yeah,
understand each other better?
we try and have our staff do Myers-Briggs, right, to try and
Yep.
get our 4 letters. I think we try and keep a legend around the office so we can understand what they mean. That's one thing we do. I think the other thing is just so challenging, especially with remote work, Carrie, is just spending time together. We try and gather Monday mornings, everybody. We do have a couple people that are remote on that call, but for the most part, we're together. And man, I am a kinesthetic human, right? Like I used to think I was visual, but I'm not. I want to be in it. Like I know you ride mountain bikes, I ride bikes. You talk about our sports backgrounds. I know you're a lot like me. I learn and absorb and I understand through my movement and by not just seeing someone like, I don't know, man, like fist bumping, high five. It's funny how that is for me. That's so important. And so I have big challenges with remote work. I get the benefits and employees. I love it. I'm trying to say like, there's only so much I see through a screen. That's the key for me. If I can spend time with someone, even 5, 10 minutes, it's not for me necessarily even about what is said. It's almost like just the presence for me. And that's what gets me ticking. And that's what I hope I can convey messages and feelings without words is through that kinesthetic transfer of information.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. So, tell me about how you ran through the ranks to get to president COO at BIC.
Uh,
I've never
well,
heard this story before, so
well,
I'm super
no,
curious.
no, it's well, without going too long into it, this is my tip for anyone listening. So Earl brought me over to work for BIC, and it's funny. He really didn't know where I was going to fall. We had a production director that was laying out our publication, our print magazine, and I think she was about to have her second child, and he was kind of concerned that maybe she wouldn't come back to work after maternity leave. So he hired me. I ran my own publication before BIC, so
Right.
he knew I had a nice balance of layout, design, my journalism background. I have a degree in journalism, right? And then, he could tell I really wasn't never doing sales, but I had to sell ads for my previous publication. And which, by the way, Carrie, for senior citizens, it's all the ads were like casinos, Pfizer, pharmaceuticals. It was all awesome, man. It was like the greatest thing ever was covering people over the age of 65. They don't like to be called seniors, by the way. So I came on to BIC with a sort of a well-rounded media background, and he didn't know where he was going to place me. So I got the job, not knowing a clear path, but I believed in Earl. I believed in BIC, and I had a lot of people that knew him and knew his personality. Earl is a godfather and a legend in our business, and I had a lot of people tell me, "Hey, man, whether you have a short time with Earl or you have a lifetime with Earl and the BIC Alliance and BIC Magazine, it's going to be great for your career." And that's why I kind of jumped into it. And I took a cannonball. Some people try and enter a job and they dip their toe. I didn't do that. I went right in. I said, this isn't going to work out by anything I do. If I'm going to commit to this 100% and Vic's going to work, it's going to be because I did that. That's kind of how I jumped to it. So I power washed the parking lot the first weekend of my first week on the job. And Earl came back and said, man, the building in the parking lot looks pretty good. And yeah, true story, man. And it's job security. So that's how I started at BIC. I'm not kidding you. I was kind of in support of Earl, I would say, kind of production/sales support. And our production director came back, and that role was not needed. So I basically went to our business development side of things and went from there. I mean, regional sales director, national sales, made my way into VP of sales and ops, and then onto the president role over 20 years. So Earl and Thomas have done nothing but give me opportunity here in our company, and I'm grateful for that and feel like I've taken it as well.
I love that. What a great story. And cleaning, which, I love the fact that you got out there and you cleaned is
Yeah.
amazing.
So and look, I'll mention this too. So this is like a family thing. I'm not kidding you. So I'll share this. I'll start with my dad. So my dad worked for Dow Chemical for 40 plus years, and he was a safety director, turnaround coordinator. He had a lot of roles in the Plaquemine site in Louisiana, and he has a very similar story to that. My father's a completely balanced ambidextrous, which is really weird. He can like draw with his left and his
Wow.
right hand. It's mind blowing. It's odd. And he can like throw a baseball at the same speed with both hands. That's the strangest thing you've ever seen. And so he loved art, and he was like a caricature artist, you know what I mean? Like little freehand drawings. And when people would retire from Dow, he would make them a caricature and frame it and hand it to them at their retirement party. Well, Carrie, no one's going to fire the guy who draws the retirement pictures.
No.
Right? So guess what? He was there for like 40 years. I think he did great in his job. He'd probably tell you he did average or satisfactory. But, no one was canning the guy that's giving out the retirement images, right? So that's my dad's job security. And he learned it from my mom's dad, my grandfather, whose nickname was Biscuit because James Biscuit Davis, he worked at Exxon in Baton Rouge for like 40 something years. And his thing was he was a great chef and a baker, and he would he would wake up and get to the plant at like, I don't know, 4 o'clock. You get to a plant early anyway. It's at the plant at like 4 a.m. and he's baking what they call cat head biscuits. It just means the biscuit is about the size of a cat's head, which is weird. I don't know why there's an analogy.
Uh, Weird. Yeah. Awkward.
Explain that one to me. I don't know. But he would bake these biscuits and put them on wax paper and give them to like all of the plant management. No one's firing the biscuit guy, Carrie. No one's firing the biscuit guy. so, so that's the family story. And look, it goes on, man. I told you my mom was a dance teacher. She taught like 4 generations of girls. Mom, you're still young, by the way. I'm not saying you're old at all. But mom taught like 4 generations of girls. And I mean, how do you do that, Carrie? You have full buy-in. I mean, people loved her, right? So what would she do? She would just make it a family. You know what I mean? And I learned from those three people in my life that are just tremendous. My brother owns a business in Dallas, same mentality. We all learned it from our grandparents and our parents.
I love that, and to watch, witness, observe your family staying in careers for 40 years, that is something that's unheard of today,
Yep.
and I'm sure that probably created a lot of the value that you have with your loyalty and being at BIC Alliance for almost 20 years now.
I think most people that know me tell you loyalty is I value a lot. And the other thing is I just want to be an expert. I think my issue today is, and look, I love new things too. I love trying new things,
Yeah,
but I think it was Michael Phelps that said you got to do something for 10,000 hours to be an expert. I think if your clients, if you want to have credibility, I think that's
yeah,
required,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
right?
I
And
agree.
that's always been my mentality. So.
Yeah, I know. It's the same thing. I know people have asked me, "What's next? What's after Stone Age?" And of course, I have plans of speaking and writing and all the different things that will come, but it will always include Stone Age. I can't imagine being anywhere else. I mean, our founders are in their 70s, and I plan when I'm 70, as long as my brain still works and I'm still useful, to be able to sit on the board and be able to provide that historical experience to, the future leaders of this company, and I think that's a really cool thing. I think it's something to be proud of, but a lot of people look at you like you're crazy.
Right, and I love you talked about that in your book. You talked about I think you said that it's an employee's duty to understand the history of the company
Yeah,
and contextualize their role in it. Man, that's
yeah,
that's incredible. I think of all the people that have made BIC what it is. It's 30, 40 people, and without them, we
yeah,
never would be what we are. And they may have gone, they may have left, but their time
yep.
here mattered. It was another brick on the wall. It was another step on the ladder up.
And do you have somebody at BIC who draws characters of people who retire?
Yeah,
You
I think
haven't taken up art yet?
I will say this, man. So my wife's an artist. She's got that ability. I don't have that capability. I'm amazed at people that do. I can draw like a stick figure with hair. That's about as good as it gets. That's all.
Oh, I'm so with you. I like doing those Picasso and Vino classes, right? Where you go drink wine and they teach you how to paint. And I always enjoy it. Mine are always pretty awful, but it still makes you feel proud when you're like, oh, I did that. It might not be
Yeah.
great, but I actually did that and created it. In fact, we've done it with two different teams at Stone Age, and I have those hanging in my office, and everybody's mad at me. They're like, why do you have it hanging? And I was like, because we created this together.
Yeah, that's all. That's cool. Yeah, that's pretty neat. Yeah. I know we can talk about going to some axe throwing around here. I think that'd be pretty cool too. I like that stuff. That's all. A little different from the wine and art, I guess. But
Yeah. Yeah, throwing axes and painting pictures are
a little different.
but maybe that's a business model, right? You can combine it.
There we
Go
go.
ahead and paint and throw axes.
I don't know if wine and axes is probably a bad idea. I don't know if that I don't know. You ask your safety director about that. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I think he'd say no. So let's get into a little bit more about BIC. You've
Yeah.
talked a little bit about Earl and Thomas, but let's back up and walk us through, what BIC does, how it started. Give us that context.
So about 40 years ago, the quick and skinny is our mission statement is to connect people in business and industry for the betterment of all. So how do we do that? Three ways. BIC Magazine and media. Nowadays, that's print, digital, websites, videos, everything that's for social media, everything that's required in modern communication. Our primary audience is refining, petrochemical, midstream tanks, terminals. We touch in the power. So we are truly a multi-industry energy publication and media outlet. And our big goal is to help our clients succeed and gain access to all those sites. So that also includes networking events. We manage a database of contacts that companies can access to improve their business development opportunities. So that's kind of our focus on the media side. On the recruiting side, big recruiting, we're trying to find the right people. Companies grow by finding and hiring the right people. So we fill permanent roles in this energy space, and it's pretty broad as far as that goes, but it's sales management, sales, operations, C-suite. We placed a president this year, a couple of VPs. We're working on a COO role and a CFO role. That's kind of where we play, all permanent positions in this energy world. And then if you really think about it, we've built all these relationships with business owners over our 40-year history. And naturally, we got into merger and acquisition services. So these business owners are looking for a strategic sell. They're looking for private equity to bring in an investor to maybe help them grow. It was natural for us to get into that. So we've actually done about 21 deals over our 20-year history, all for the most part in the energy space. Most of those companies are service oriented companies providing, let's just say, industrial services of all types into the heavy industrial market in this space.
I wouldn't have thought that that was natural. I mean, obviously, you guys know everybody, but so are you matchmaking on those deals?
Yeah.
Or what's your role?
Yeah, so we take it from understanding their exit strategy. Typically, that conversation is 2 to 3 to 5 years ahead of a closing of a transaction. And we take that deal, it's way more than a handshake. We dig into their financials, we prepare their business to do a transaction, is what I would say. We build out a deal book, probably 10 to 30 pages, we're going to send out to potential quote unquote buyers or investors. We market the deal through diligence and all the way up to close. So we truly are what you call an investment bank or a M&A broker is another way to
Yeah.
describe us.
Yeah. Interesting. What's your favorite part of the business?
Oh, wow. I love BIC that it's everything. I'm doing this right now. I was at a golf tournament this morning. All those things are a blast. There's other side of what we do that is way more mundane, but I love the mix that we have, right? I love media. I love marketing. I've always been passionate about it. The recruiting side is fun because, man, there ain't nothing like finding somebody a job. That's the
Yeah.
best, right? I love
Yeah.
that. So that's fun. The M&A side, Carrie, as I built relationships in my career here at BIC, now I'm really starting to see those come to fruition and having these business owners, folks that, looking to retire, maybe want to spend some more time with their families. That's an incredible thing. Maybe they never thought they could ever get a deal done, or they're not the right size, or whatever doubts they may have had. Finding the way to give them an exit strategy is incredible, and it's that's probably the funnest thing I'm doing right now. And I think for the next 10 or so years should be a really nice market for us in the next decade.
And you talked a little bit about Earl being the godfather. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about him because Bic wouldn't be Bic without Earl.
No.
Even though I know he would give credit to all of you amazing people who have helped him build it. But can you
Right.
tell us a little bit about
Well,
him?
well, the neatest thing about Earl's story, and he's written several books. It's what we do
Yeah.
together that counts. Is really the story of Vic. By the way,
Yeah.
great piece that he did. And Earl would say that Vic is the overnight success that took 40 years. Right. But great. He's the king of the one-liners, man. He's the king of the
Yes, he
one-liners.
is.
Earl was a journeyman carpenter. He really came from industry. He was birthed out of industry. He would tell you, I hire editors because I'm not the best writer. Isn't that funny? He owns a publication, right? But he would say that. And for me, what stands out to me, Earl, is just adversity and is overcoming adversity. And Earl did a great job of finding people in his life like Thomas. And there's been so many other people that we call them Bixters, people that loved BIC, cared for BIC, and grew BIC. And we also call our marketing partners that too. People that without them, we would have never started BIC. It took 6, 7, 12, 18 initial business owners to support Earl, or BIC would have never gotten off the ground. And he would get teary eyed talking about some of these individuals that started BIC early on. And Earl started really this is weird. He actually started in the video business. Earl was a fire and safety training coordinator, and he started making these fire and safety videos like, hey, how to put out a tank fire, right? Something like that. And so BIC was really founded in the video world back in the 80s. Well, he created a little flyer that would tell people, hey, I'm going to publish this video. And people started saying, wait a minute, where are you sending this flyer to? Well, I'm delivering it and mailing it to safety directors, plant managers, operations. And someone said, well, Earl, I would want to advertise on that. So BIC publication actually grew from that. It was from Earl trying to launch a video business, but he had this mailer that he would mail out, and someone realized, wait a minute, I want my logo and my name on that because that is what is being sent. Isn't that
Yeah.
fascinating? So that's kind of
Wow.
really the origin story of BIC. I'm talking like really, really, really early on. That's kind of where it came from. And back in the 80s, you're trying to do video, the equipment was crazy expensive. You had to keep
Yeah.
up with all that. That was not a fun business to be in. 3 years after you started, your equipment was all antiquated. So it's kind of the origin story of BIC. And the other thing that Earl did was brilliant was he started offering our front cover sponsorships, which is not common in the publishing world. And that was a huge game changer. When he calls it his money clip moment, is what he would say. There's a story behind that too. But that's when he felt like he had gotten to a point where he knew BIC would be a success, Carrie, is what I would say.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that story. So tell us what's next for BIC. You talked a little bit about M&A for the next 10 years, but are you doing anything else that's interesting that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would say our readers are demanding media and information in so many different ways. Some people get their news and information exclusively from social media. Many
Yep.
of our decision makers in industry are silver haired folks that perhaps aren't as digital savvy. I said perhaps as younger folks, they still love that print publication. So for us, it's a real challenge. I trying to hit all the different mediums, hitting a specific audience. The other thing, Carrie, is a lot of what we do in our industry is fairly technical. And then you combine that with short attention span. I don't know if TikTok is the easiest way to communicate hands-free cleaning tools and automation for heat exchanger cleaning, right? You know what I mean? So I think
Yeah,
that's a
definitely
challenge.
not.
Right, right. So that's a challenge for most marketing professionals. At the same time, if we want to engage a younger audience, we certainly can't belittle those mediums and those paths. So
Right.
that's what we struggle with. And for us as a media company, the brain power, the various different medium expertise that is required costs a lot of capital for a media company. We didn't have a video team 12, 15 years ago. You know what I mean? And now we do it all. We're starting to do full digital marketing services for our clients that maybe don't have a marketing director. We can handle all their social media. We can do their website optimization, all their demands from a digital
Yeah,
perspective. So we just try and say yes, and then we figure it out.
I love it. Well, it's
Yeah.
built a great company off of saying
Yeah.
yes, so
Right.
Yep,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Well, I appreciate everything that you do. It's a fantastic publication, and I'm always enriched. I can't make it through all of it every month because it has so much content, but it's fantastic. It is
Well,
absolutely fantastic.
Okay, we personally just honored to be on with you, and you're a real leader in our industry, and it shows. Your staff's awesome every time we run into them. Of course, we're referring to Stone Age, and thank you for your book too. I really enjoyed it and try to spend time with it, and embrace it, and I hope people go back and listen to our podcast too, where I dug into your value and the value proposition that you shared in your writing.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Well, I love that you care about self-leadership. We've talked a little bit about that, so maybe we'll just finish up here with some leadership stuff, and then I'll let you get back to your day. What is self-leadership to you, and why do you think it's so important?
Oh wow, yeah, it's funny. I was going back and look at some of my notes I made from your book. I think for me, it's trying to hand those leadership skills on to other people and
Yeah,
empower other people. I already have to be thinking about, wait a minute, if I'm gonna continue here and be a leader here, it's really more about making sure that I've genuinely located those in our organization that can be right, and then invest the time in making them be better as a leader. That is our biggest struggle. I think for a small business, we all wear many, many, many hats, right? We don't
yeah.
have that big structure. And that to me has got to be a major priority here, especially in the next 2 to 5 years.
I love that you said that. So many people will go to the answer of driving growth. And while that's
Right, right.
important, I think our number one job as leaders is to get the best out of our people, to help them grow professionally and personally. Because when we have rock stars on our team, we're going to be rock stars, right? Our performances, you're going to drive results so much easier when you have a great team. And I think a lot of leaders look at it as like, well, I need to be doing these things. It's like, no, you need to be growing your team so they can do those things. And I think that's counterintuitive for some people.
And I think it's hard for it's probably I know it's hard for me, and that is like I'm a grab the shovel guy. You know what I mean? So it's like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, this is leaking. I'm gonna patch it. And so for me, I have to stop myself and be like, Jeremy, everyone knows you know it. You know what I mean? Like, right,
Yeah.
who else can know it? And then drive someone else to solve that problem or
Yeah.
create that change. So I'm certainly fighting my instincts for my personality. I think for me, it's probably always going to be a challenge. I like to think I'm
Yeah.
a little better at it.
Yep. No, I hear you. It is hard, especially when you have so much experience just to say, "Oh, yeah, I know." I really try hard to not to do that as well. And my favorite question is, "What do you think? What do you
Yeah,
think we should do? How do you think we should solve this?" Because it forces me to stop going, "Oh, here's my idea," and help them really draw out their own conclusions. And that helps people gain confidence in themselves. When somebody expresses an idea or opinion and you say, "Yeah, I think you should go try that. That sounds good." But you're helping build that confidence of, yes, I do have the critical thinking skills to be able to solve problems on my own without having to have my CEO or my boss figure it out for me.
that's right. And I could see it through email chains. Like at first, I'll see a couple
Yeah.
emails and I want to jump in there. I found myself like, hey, let it sit a
Yeah.
day, let it sit at two. Guess
Totally.
what, Carrie? Like 99% of the time, someone's got the idea. And then in the
Yep.
end, it's just me going, sounds good. Right. And then,
I totally agree.
but I'm not as good at that in person. Is that going to make
Yeah.
sense? I told you I'm a kinesthetic person. For me, like that's the challenge. I'm pretty good about it in written communication. I know how to step back and wait, but in person, it's harder for me. So.
Especially when you're so enthusiastic about what you do, right? You just said, "Is this work? I love what I do." So it makes it easy to want to share and participate and contribute your ideas, but
Yes.
it's not always what's most helpful in that situation.
Right. Yeah.
All right. Well, one final question before I ask how we can find you and all the things that BIC does. So, the name of my podcast is Reflect Forward. What does Reflect Forward mean to you?
Yeah, wow. So, Carrie, I think as far as reflect forward, to me is how do we sort of take the context of what we know, what hopefully has generated some level of wisdom in us, and then applying that to the next thing. For me and the different services that we provide, that's a real challenge. And it's interesting. I feel really good about my knowledge of media and that side of our business. The other sides of our business, I have to rely on others. You know what I mean? So for me, I'm actually drawing on their knowledge and their wisdom. I'm trying to help drive the organization forward based on what they know. And I think that's a good thing. I know that in some areas of our business, I will never be the master. And that's okay. As long as I can keep masters on the staff, as long as I can empower those folks that are the ninjas in what they do, I think we'll be fine.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. Okay, so how can listeners find you and how can they find all the different things that BIC Alliance does?
Right. Yeah. So to find me a really strong LinkedIn presence, check me out,
Yeah,
Jeremy Osterberger, on my personal page. Most importantly, though, our organization, our business, bicmagazine.com is a great place to go for industry news, knowledge, and to understand what we bring to the table to industry. Our corporate site is bicalliance.com. And from there, you can locate our other companies, BIC Recruiting and IBS Investment Banking.
wonderful. Well, I'll include all those in the show notes as well. Well, it's been so much fun to interview you. I just think you are such an awesome human being, and I'm so honored to know you.
Carrie, you're the best. Thank you for all your time and appreciate everything you do as always. We're going to have you back on again in the future on our show as well.
Yeah, let's do it. There's lots of shop that we can talk. I know that.
And keep pedaling.
Thanks. Yes, I'm going to. It's still beautiful weather here, even though it's getting close to winter. It's
Ugh,
more mountain biking weather than it is skiing weather.
man, I'm a wuss. Like, give me like if it gets below like 45, I'm not riding. I'm inside on that one. I'm in my garage at least. I don't know.
Well, I'm the same way. I have a Peloton, which I'm obsessed with. I ride it almost every day, but I'm the same thing. If it's below 45, even, maybe 40, but I prefer
Yeah.
above 50. But I think it's like close to 70 here today in
Oh.
Southwest Colorado. So
Oh
it's like
wow. You're on.
perfect mountain
It's
biking.
on.
I know, that's why I said
So,
it's not skiing season yet.
I've told this before. I'm a road biker, and this is funny. I was I was gonna try and trade crypto to buy a new bike, and let's just say I have not bought a new bike. I should just work. That's a better path. Yeah, trading crypto to try and earn money is not working out, Gary, for me. I'm just saying.
It's really, really, really tough.
I should,
Yeah, you're
I
right.
should,
Work.
I should go back to power washing. There we go.
Yeah,
I
there
go
you
back that
go.
way.
That's how you can earn that extra money. Well,
Yeah,
bikes are like the price of a small car, so
it is. I
it's
know.
not insignificant.
It is not. Yeah. So, well, but it's a good thing to invest in, right? So there you go.
Yep. Yep, you're
Well,
investing in yourself, that's for sure.
you're
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks again, Jeremy. I really appreciate you coming.
Had a blast. Thanks, Carrie, for hanging out, and wish you all the best.
Thank you. All right, hang tight, everybody. I'll be right back. All right, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that interview. He's so great. Such a fun person. All right, with that, I will leave you to your week. I hope it's a fantastic one. If you like this podcast, please write a review, rate it, share it with a friend, subscribe to it. It helps with the algorithms. And don't forget to pick up my book. I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Take care.